Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Midweek Takeaway. Today we're joined by Colin Bird, Executive Chairman of African Pioneer. Welcome back, Hot Podcast, Colin.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you.
African Pioneer announces that Namibia's Ministry of Environment and Tourism has approved the Environmental Clearance Certificate, ECC, for its 85% owned Ongombo copper gold project located 40 kilometres northeast of Windhoek. This approval enables the activation of the previously granted 20-year mining licence, ML240, completing the project's permitting process. The ECC follows submission of the Environmental and Social Impact Assessment and Environmental Management Plan, reaffirming the initial ECC granted in April 2023. With updated mineral resource estimates released in May 2023, African Pioneer is now in advanced funding discussions to progress the open pit development, with pre-production engineering and site infrastructure planning already underway. Sounds very exciting, Colin. Please tell us more.
Well, again, we've had a mining license for some time. This is an interesting project on Gombo. It's the other end of the matchless copper belt. It's some 20 kilometers from town centre. You don't get too many mines 20 kilometers from main city, capital city centre, which is 10 minutes off a tarred road from the airport.
I've actually been on that road and driven past that. You see the signs and everything, don't you, from the Windhoek airport?
That's correct. And so the ECC is the final piece of document that we're required, and as you say, fully licensed. What's not known, I don't think, by the market in the AIM market there is that we've got 293,000 tons of contained copper. So in actual fact, that's bigger than Luansobi in Zambia. And the gold grades up at the top end, and when I say the top end window, are the same, if not better, than Open Gorob down at the southern end of the matchless copper belt. And the copper grades, obviously, was about the same. We've got a year's mini open pit, whilst we start the plan. And then thereafter, we will have a fairly flatly dipping. We will have an underground operation, which we've got decent widths of reef. Where it's a bit more narrow, the grade is obviously a bit higher. It's relatively flat in most of the take, and so therefore will lend itself to scraper mining and selective mining. In certain areas, it's possibly, you've got dips where you could mechanize it, and in other areas, more limited, you've got areas where you take use of gravity, and you can drop quite wide bodies, and when you blast them, they drop to a central point. So it's not a difficult ore body to encounter. We've got a year pit, which we can enter the ore body via the pit, and our preference there is to build a plant. We've been having these podcasts for some long time, Kevin, Phil, and I've been the pundit of small mines, going on and on about small mines. The day of the small mine, we made a slogan: "The day of the small mine is back."
You need a cap. You need a red cap with that on, like Trump, like "Make America Great." We need to get the day of the small miner is back, or something like that.
Yes, exactly. But, we're looking into it. We've always looked into it scientifically. But what really kills small mines, or has always killed small mines in the past, is you can't have half a mine manager. You can't have half a plant metallurgist. So they carry a burden of fixed cost. But knowing that there's no alternative supply, I'm convinced that our model is the right model. And I'm looking around the world at various places where it's been done. And the Chinese are particularly good at building plant cheaply. And you might be surprised to find out that China is also very good at supplying plant and supplying cheap plant, which is both cheap and effective. And so we're doing a study, and actually the tiers of 3,000, 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 of how the capex compared to the op cost, compared to the relationship between variable and fixed. And we're actually finding tiers of production in what we're looking for, putting an whole load of science into it. And Ongombo fits, from a science point of view, a mine which produces about 7,000 tons of copper per year, and the fixed costs are very acceptable, and it's just in the range where we want to be. But instead of talking about a $25 million Western-type plant, you start talking about the Chinese plant, you're actually down to a quarter of the cost, and the time to build, half the time to build. So we're not allowed to make too many forecasts on these podcasts, but I can tell you, Ngombo, with its position, really lends itself to a nice small mine which can sustain the sort of level I'm talking about, 7,000 tons of copper for a good long time. And remember, Phil, 7,000 tons of copper is a 70 million revenue business. You know, we're not talking peanuts. We're not talking First Quantum's Panama either. But we're talking about something which is sustainable in a very good country, in a very mining supportive country, stable business, close to the capital city that can actually have a sustainable life for a long time. Notwithstanding that, there's quite a bit of artisanal mining activity in the area, which of course would need enough for the copper. And what we're talking about here, gents, is a 91% recovery with the 28% copper grade and a very clean concentrate. And then you've thrown in there probably 6 to 7 grams of gold with some silver. Very nice concentrate, gents. Very nice concentrates. So you may not have a lot of noise from me about African Pioneer and its Mongombo project, but now it's ready, well placed, off, and we've only just of late received a lot more interest than we did, which is a reflection of copper expectations. But the interest now on this project is quite high, and I do believe that fully permitted, both from a mining license point of view and a environmental point of view, it's a very marketable project which should receive both financing offers for offtake and financing offers to assist to build, be it debt or equity or a combination of both. So feeling very good about it, Phil.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was just looking at the JORC update that you put out I think it was in 2023. You know, there was a significant increase in resources. The indicated it was sitting around 5.7 million tons at like 1.1% copper equivalent, about 53,000 tons of copper, 42,000 ounces of gold, and 800,000 ounces of silver. And then there was obviously the inferred underground resources, approximately 23 million tons at 1.1% with 220,000, 180,000 ounces of gold and 4.3 million ounces of silver. So it is a significant resource that, you know, when you look at the size and also the increase. But what are the plans? Are the plans there going to be start moving earth, or are you going to maybe potentially increase the JORC there as well? You know, how do you build the asset now?
Well, I don't think there's a lot of sense in building the JORC. We are where we are. I don't think the ore body. You know what often happens in our business? You know, you get people like me saying we want 15,000 tons a year of copper. You know, it's a daft way to start, Phil, and it's a mistake. And this is where the shareholders really often have a bad experience. The ore body talks to you. You know, its width, its distribution, its strike, its attitude. You know, is it steeply dipping? Does it plunge? Does it lend itself to gravity methods? Can you mechanize it? If you mechanize it, what's your level of dilution? Because you can't fit machines into 1.5 meters or 2 meters. All of those questions have to be plugged into your scenario and plug those questions in. And we, you know, back to my 10 minutes ago when I was talking about the relationship between CapEx, fixed costs, variable costs, and all of those good copper price and all of those good things. We've really optimized out at 7,000 tons for Ngombo. And that's where it's going to stay. So what's the good when you reckon you've got 290,000 tons of copper? What's the good looking for more than 7? You know, what's good looking for more when you know it's going to be around for a long time? We will conduct exploration in the area, and obviously if that exploration does grow, it's thicker, lends itself to a bigger operation. I've no doubt in my mind that we will enlarge the throughput. But as we stand now, we've got a neat little operation. We know that we can build that plant, $7,000 or $8,000. We know we can get into production with a contractor. We know within a year and a half, we can go eggs that open pit, and we've got our entries into the ore body. So we've got a manageable plan, manageable for our size. Don't need to go set on huge mining teams, and it basically fits the bill that we're talking about. Small mining. Trouble is, Phil, you know, it will suit you, suit Kevin, suit me, and suit our shareholders immensely. But it's a bit of a drop in the ocean when you think about the looming copper demand. You need some Panamas, 400,000 tons a year of copper, you know, and you need a lot of 7,000 tons a year to equal 400,000 tons. So what we're doing is certainly going to be very valuable because it is some copper. If we can extend it like we can, that Matchless Belt is a huge system. We're pretty sure we can. We may be developing a much bigger animal, which is more suitable for the bigger market. But as we stand, get into production, don't keep doing those placings. I mean, the shareholders are fed up of those placings where you're raising 200, 300, 400,000 pounds. They're fed up. We're fed up. We're fed up. But collectively, we're all fed up. But I think, as I've said in the Rick Rule program that you put on the other day, Rick sees the sun coming on our sector, and I don't see how it can't come on our sector, Phil, because you're Goldman Sachs. You read the results, distributions to shareholders, elevated dividends. Then you get to the back page and you see that the resource, the inventory of copper is depleting. So they'll be bringing that to attention. Oh, the earnings aren't sustainable. And, projects like ours, where we've got a startup mine, which is cash lucrative, does very well, but is adjoined to a major mining system where we can get a major exploration environment where we can get in there and do some meaningful exploration, is a pretty good position to be in, Phil. And that's where most of our projects, and it was by design. We've always gone where the majors have been before. So you inherit large data banks, which create yourself would have cost 20, 25, $30 million. So it's by design. Often the wrong decisions made for the wrong reasons. I'm not going to name any particular company in particular, Phil, but sometimes they say, we're out of here. And when we're out of here, by Jove, they come in with the trumpets blaring on the shining white Chargers, and they go out even faster. And it's often not a technical reflection. It's we're out of here.
Yeah, we just don't want to do it anymore in this particular country because we've decided we're not going to do it. Tell me, Colin, what is the gold contribution and the silver contribution in Ongombo? It seems like it could be quite significant.
Yeah, 6 or 7 grams. Sorry, 0.6, 0.7 grams, which is.
I was going to say 6 or 7 grams. You've got
7
a gold
grams.
mine.
We've got a gold mine. We've got a gold mine, not a copper mine. You're absolutely right. But you've got to put this all in perspective. Over the period we've been talking, and I've been coming on your podcast, the value of these byproducts, silver and gold, have basically risen dramatically. And so in the eddy prices you've got now for gold and silver, they in actual fact are worth more than the copper combined. So
you're approaching $60 a ton for 0.6 grams. I just did the calculations a minute ago. And how many grams of silver are you talking about?
Well, you've seen on a different part of the copper belt, it can go as high as 2 ounces. But I want to be very, very frugal here and say half an ounce. So you're talking about $15 probably.
Yeah, well, $17 at the minute, yeah, because it was $35. Yeah, so you're getting up towards $75 a ton of byproduct.
But byproducts, which is about 0.8% copper, in a very quick calculation, 0.7, 0.8% copper. Yeah. So if you're talking about 1.1, 1.2, you're actually talking about 2% copper.
Yeah, you're getting close to 2% copper, aren't you? 1.85 or copper as a copper equivalent.
And what you probably don't realize, Kevin, is a few years ago, you wouldn't have been paid out for those precious metals. They were fairly naughty and wouldn't pay for them. Now they just love a concentrate with base metals in. So what happens is they knock a gram off and pay you 94% for the remainder.
And you're going to get the goal for this is to get 7,000 tons of contained copper, and that obviously includes the gold and the silver, or that would be on top.
No, that contained copper in concentrate, and then you'd have byproduct contributions. By the way, I don't want the audience to be misled. We did point about 0.6, and then I've just made a statement that knock a gram off, and one could say, oh, that's it gone then. No, that's in concentrate. It will be reported at about 0.6, 0.7 grams, the copper will.
No, you mean in the concentrate, it will be 6 or 7 grams, you mean?
Yes, that's right. I didn't want to confuse the listeners because remember, we talked about in raw 0.6, 0.7. And then I've just come out with a statement that the purchasers of the concentrate knock a gram off. So unless you were sort of au fait with how it all works, that'd have been, they don't get paid for the gold. So I've just corrected that.
Okay, no problems. So African Pioneer as it stands, now we've got the potential to become a producer obviously in
Yes.
Namibia, in Gombo. We've, as Phil said, we've driven past this place. We know where it is. It's very close to Windhoek. What is happening in Zambia then, in terms of these licenses, and obviously with First Quantum? It looks like First Quantum actually might be coming out of the abyss in Panama. I don't think it's going to be quick. As you heard on the interview with Rick, he doesn't think it's going to be quick either, but it looks like it could actually come to fruition. Are you still keen that, First Quantum's going to move forward with those licenses, or is something else likely to happen?
Well, first of all, on the comment that's coming out, there's some news today that First Quantum have dropped the arbitration. That was a condition of government to enter into this discussion, so that's very favourable. But Rick and I would be basically reading off the same page. In fact, a lot of things Rick said I would totally endorse. And that mine's in rainforest type situations, in very, very difficult. It's not in a narrow desert like, you park the Boeings. And so deterioration of the plant will have been quite serious. And so First Quantum will have a year to 18 months to get that plant fully functional. I do think they've got concentrate on the ground that can sell, so that won't be a quick fix. But in the grand scheme of things, First Quantum and us have been very good partners, and there's a good personal relationship with the company. And there are quite a few other companies now interested in our Western Foreland positions. And so from that point of view, it would be wrong in this podcast to make any projections. But as you know, African Pioneer have got a project very well positioned in the Western Foreland thrust and fold belt. You shouldn't forget that you can't use the Western Foreland in one breath and ignore the Western Foreland and ignore the thrust and fold belt. They run more or less in tandem and in parallel. And the thrust and fold belt is very well named because that's just what it does. It's all over the bloody place. But all over the place is good because it means there's a lot of action. Fluids have been allowed pathways. You've created entrapments for fluids in ancient times. And so don't get totally carried away with Western Foreland. Just put the two together, Western Foreland and thrust and fold belt, and we're in that vicinity. So very valuable properties. How we pan out in the short to mid-term is in debate.
Yeah, well, that was my next question. Do you think something's going to happen on that within this 2025? But you don't have to answer that because we don't like timelines.
I've been very heavily criticised for giving timelines, Kevin, and I've very willingly given them, and then I've been chastised very seriously, both bulletin boards and the regulators, for giving timelines. So it's better I don't give them.
Yeah. So effectively, African Pioneer now has a mine with a license, with everything ready to go, with 290,000 tons of contained copper with gold and silver credits.
That's correct.
Now, if you put that asset in Australia and said, here you go, it's all ready to go, how much is it worth?
That's one way of getting me to say what I shouldn't say.
Don't answer it, Colin. We can wrap up at this point.
No, let me just say that when I first started out in this business, I produced a nice little histogram. And on the left-hand side, the assumption was a bit sort of silly, I suppose, in a way, but it was a project which had been full feasibility studied and was ready for go. And then on the bottom was and then that side of the left-hand side was dollars. Then on the bottom was a set of countries, and it was gold. And so valuation Zimbabwe was, I think, $10. The valuation Australia was $70, and Nevada was probably $90. So if you shift them about, the big player is perception. And you're absolutely right, Kevin. And I don't mind repeating one statement I made, and that's the Mankind project, which is down in the Philippines. That if that was in Nevada, it would have been snapped up overnight for a fortune and would have been in one of the best sales in the last 20 years. It's a brilliant project. So if you now, and again, there's another factor here, gents, is that, copper is flying. Copper companies are flying in Australia because the Australians are convinced that a sustainable $11,000 per ton of copper is both sustainable and therefore will be the new assessment price for new projects, and which is good. Here in the UK and in the AIM market, the retail is not convinced. The retail sector is not convinced with the copper story. And I'm very sorry to say that copper story in the retail sector in the UK is viewed, the copper fortunes are related to the electric car industry. And if the UK retail market is saying, well, that's stalling and stalling badly, they are so right. But they must look at every other driver of copper. As I've said, infrastructure, these data banks.
We need copper. It's as simple as that.
Emerging nations. The UK thinking is lagging both Canada, stock market, and to a greater degree, the Australian market. So this is why, gentlemen, whenever I get the opportunity, I do take it to go on about the fundamentals of copper, because we, in the UK, we just do not seem to believe the story. We just do not accept. And when we see the downturn, we tend to pan the AIM companies who are heavily involved in copper. I think you've got to look, I really do think the retail sector and the commentators like yourselves have got to look through. I've got to look through the short-term Donald Trumps and tariffs and just look at an old big world which is developing. And I think Robert Freeland makes the classic remark: if you believe in Armageddon, buy gold. If you believe in a bright new future, buy copper. And Kevin's going to say before I'll take the words out of his mouth, if we look at the gold price, then Colin, we're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a worry, isn't it, when you look at that?
Yeah, but I don't think so. I don't think so, really.
No, it's great to hear your musings again. Obviously, Colin Bird, Executive Chairman of African Pioneer, we thank you very much for appearing on the podcast again.
It's my pleasure, and it always is. Upwards and onwards. Thank you very much, gents.
Cheers, Colin.
Cheers.
Thanks, Colin.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.